We have a wonderful webinar presented today by Brittany Holmes, Educational Consultant, Classroom Management.
Thank you, Cheney. As mentioned, my name is Brittany Holmes, and today I'm going to provide you with some tips to help with classroom management. So, to start off, let's look at the definition of classroom management for our new teachers or teachers who need a little refresher. Classroom management refers to the methods and strategies educators employ to create an optimal learning environment by establishing rules, routines, and relationships. This is important because effective classroom management enhances student learning by minimizing disruptions, maximizing instructional time, and fostering a positive atmosphere. Classroom management is the cornerstone of an effective educational experience. By understanding its definition, importance, and objectives, educators can create an environment conducive to learning that supports all students. It not only involves creating rules and expectations, but also establishing a classroom culture that values respect and understanding. In addition, understanding the theoretical foundations of classroom management is crucial for educators. The applications of behaviorism, constructivism, and social emotional learning helps educators to design effective strategies that align with their teaching philosophy and address the complex dynamics in today's classrooms. Behaviorism emphasizes observable behaviors and proposes that students' actions are influenced by reinforcement and punishment. Effective approaches include implementing reward systems and establishing clear consequences for your students. Constructivism encourages active learning where students build knowledge through experience. This approach fosters collaboration and critical thinking in the classroom. Lastly, social emotional learning, SEL. This emphasizes the importance of emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. Incorporating SEL into your classroom management supports students in developing self-awareness and developing relationships. So, effective classroom management hinges on three key principles, and that's organization, engagement, and communication. A well-organized classroom minimizes chaos and maximizes learning potential. Structures like established routines and clear roles and expectations can help create a calm, predictable environment. Having a clear routine for the start of class, transitions, and other classroom activities can foster independence and responsibility for your students. With an organized classroom, students are much more likely to be engaged in the class. Once you have that, you can establish engaging interactive lessons and varied instructional methods that capture students' attentions and maintain their interest in learning. Lastly, communication. Having open channels of communication among students and teachers builds trust and clarify expectations. This helps to build relationships and encourages participation. By employing these key principles, teachers can create a structured environment that encourages active participation, fosters dialogue between teacher and student, and it can cultivate a productive learning atmosphere that supports all students and their needs. Classroom environment and physical and psychological aspects. So the physical and psychological aspects of the classroom environment plays a pivotal role in student success, like everything that I will be discussing today. A well-designed learning space can encourage participation and promote a sense of belonging of that student within your class. What does your layout look like in your class? Does it allow for easy access to supplies and classroom routines, or is it challenging to navigate? Having a thoughtfully arranged classroom with designated spaces for collaborative work, instruction, and independent activities caters to students' different learning styles and activities that you have in your classroom. Now, what about your decor? Is your decor calming and relaxing, or is it a little overstimulating for some of our autistic kiddos? Does it welcome all students or make some students uncomfortable? Make sure your class decor reflects positive messages and motivational elements that inspire students to engage with the learning material. You want a classroom that makes them feel inspired and included, opposed to being excluded from the class. Establishing rules and expectations. You want to first start off by making sure you develop clear rules. Clearly articulated rules set the foundation for expected behavior, guiding students through self-regulation and responsibility in their learning environment. It also involves your student, oh, I'm sorry, also involve your students in the development of your rules. This helps fosters ownership and accountability, making them more likely to adhere to established expectations. And this is typically done at the beginning of the year, but you can do it whenever. Lastly, and more importantly, be consistent with your rules. Please do not pick and choose when you want to enforce your rules. Your students are always watching how you handle them and the students around them. So consistency in enforcing rules ensures fairness and builds trust within the classroom, helping students feel secure in their learning space. By establishing rules and expectations, you maintain order and encourage positive behavior within your class. Clear, consistent rules developed with student input enhance adherence and create a responsible learning community within your class. Now let's look at some preventative strategies for classroom management. When thinking about classroom management for your class, you want to think of all the possibilities of what could happen. Now, there's no way for you to predict all possible behaviors, but you do want to take some time to think about some of the common behaviors that you can fix early on and not have to worry about later. For more senior teachers, this may be a little bit easier because you've had the experience. But for our novice teachers, this can be challenging. So, um, you don't know what you don't know. So you could ask the teachers who've had these students before, or just do some basic research level of common behaviors or expectations of things that could happen in the class for you. Anytime you're able to anticipate potential disruptions through proactive measures helps to prevent conflicts and issues before they escalate. Have you been told that these students have conflict? Two of your kiddos have conflict with another person in your class. Don't sit them next to each other. That's a quick, obvious fix that you can be proactive in doing. To help with behaviors, you want to establish routines in your classroom once again. And a routine is an excellent way to provide structure and predictability, helping students understand what is expected of them and minimize unpredictability and anxiety. Some of our kiddos really thrive with knowing what comes next in the class and a routine. So if you are able to use that in your class, you can also possibly help with behaviors that come from the unpredictability of your routine or the unknown. Now, after the school year has started, you want to monitor if there are any causes for student behaviors. If you notice any patterns forming, start to collect data so that you may prepare effective interventions that will resolve problem behaviors. And so that in the event that you have to get the behavior specialist or someone else involved, you already have that data to show what the behavior is, how many times it's occurring, so that an effective intervention can be put in place. Discipline and conflict resolution techniques. Earlier, we talked about developing classroom rules for your class. Now we must address discipline and conflict resolution. These two things go hand in hand with classroom rules. Discipline and conflict resolution techniques are vital components of effective classroom management. Utilizing restorative practices, de-escalation strategies, and appropriate consequences enable educators to address conflict constructively and supportively. Two strategies that you should use are restorative practice and de-escalation strategies. Restorative practices, it emphasizes resolving conflict and healing rather than punitive measures. De-escalation strategies utilize verbal and nonverbal strategies to diffuse tense situations. This means staying calm yourself, actively listening without interrupting, showing empathy, and respecting personal space. Now, I know as teachers, we also have feelings. So this may be challenging to do in the moment when a student has done something to maybe irritate you and you're trying to work out a resolution with them. But keep these things in mind. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Once again, I can't say this enough. Implementing fair, consistent consequences that focus on learning rather than punishment can help reinforce positive behaviors and deter negative ones because, once again, your students are watching how you handle all of the students in the class. Are you handling your students with love and care, or are you just surviving the school day? When dealing with problem behavior in the class, now shift from teacher-centered to person-centered management. Educators with the custodial approach tend to exert strict control, relying on punitive measures, moralistic attitudes, and impersonal relationships with students, which breeds general mistrust and focus solely on maintaining order. However, employing a humanistic approach cultivates a classroom environment that emphasizes active interaction and communication, close personal relationships with students, and mutual respect. It also fosters positive attitudes, flexible rules, and the promotion of self-discipline, self-determination, and independence among students. So, in looking at this table, you can see the differences between the two approaches. With a teacher-centered approach, the teacher is the sole leader, whereas in a person-centered approach, leadership is shared in the class. In a teacher-centered approach, teachers take responsibility for all the paperwork and organization. But with this person-centered approach, students are facilitators for the operation of the class. This helps to take off some of the burden for teachers. Students are able to hold more ownership in the overall operations of the class using a person-centered approach opposed to a teacher-centered approach. It creates a sense of community within the class, that everyone's responsible for the maintenance of the class and the overall function. Is the classroom clean? Everyone's going to take accountability because it does not just solely fall on the teacher. If you have a designated area for if you were out and you need missing work, they don't have to come to the teacher. They know where to go. When you finish your assignment, is there a designated area for completed work? They don't have to come to you. They know where to put their work. So you want to create a person-centered approach because a teacher-centered approach gives really more burden to the teacher opposed to a person-centered approach. Now that your classroom is up and running, let's look at ways to enhance learning, but also maintain classroom management because, after all, that is the key for this presentation today. Tools you can use are technology. Technology can help to streamline processes, facilitate engagement, monitor behavior, collect data, and so much more. Integrating technology into your classroom management can significantly enhance your capabilities. Now, classroom management doesn't just help with behaviors, but it just helps you become a more effective teacher as well. So the benefits of using classroom management are great. Now, additionally, you want to engage students through the learning strategies, and this is pivotal for capturing their attention and enhancing their educational experience. By prioritizing participation, cooperative learning, and motivation, teachers can create dynamic and interactive classrooms, which helps with learning. Incorporating motivational techniques such as gamification and choice can significantly boost student engagement and excitement for learning, which will help with your classroom management. You also want to create unity in your classroom. This fosters collaboration and understanding among students. To do this, pardon me, to do this, teachers should accommodate learning differences because this ensures all students, regardless of their learning needs, have access to the curriculum and thrive in the classroom. Secondly, you want to provide appropriate support and resources to meet the needs of all students. This will allow all students to have success in learning. Third, value the uniqueness of all your students, embedding their unique perspectives in the classroom and their experiences will make them feel included. If you have a kiddo that likes to be active, maybe you have him always do your errands to another teacher. This way, they're getting their opportunity to burn some of that energy that they have. Okay, so now that we've discussed the many ways to improve classroom management, we are now going to look at a scenario in which a teacher needs a little help with classroom management. Now, I'm going to read the following scenario, and afterwards, we will analyze the situation to identify specific strategies that the teacher could implement to enhance his classroom. Now, this teacher has already started the school year, so he's missed this whole presentation. The problem. Mr. Lewis repeatedly had problems with leading a classroom discussion with his eighth graders. No matter how involved in the topic the students were, there were usually several students sitting in the back who would talk, shout out silly answers, and play with objects that they had brought from home. Mr. Lewis would respond by putting student names on the board, and if they continued disrupting, he would take away their free time. On several occasions, when the students became completely disruptive, he called their parents. As a result, their behavior improved for a few days, but soon, like many students, the students returned to the same disruptive behavior. One of the few times when all the students were well behaved during a discussion, Mr. Lewis would provide them verbal praise. Now that we've heard about the situation, what do you think Mr. Lewis should do in this situation for his classroom management? Well, here are some steps in which Mr. Lewis can take for improving his classroom management and establishing a sustainable plan. So first, he needs to assess and reset classroom expectations. What he needs to do is review expectations with students. Begin by discussing the expectation for respectful, active participation during classroom discussions. Reinforce these rules by co-creating with the students a simple, positive set of class discussion guidelines with the students, such as one person speaks at a time. Respect others by listening when they are speaking. Raise your hand if you have a question or comment. This reinforces positive behavior. It reinforces expectations consistently and provides examples of appropriate and inappropriate behavior. For instance, even role-playing scenarios where students show how to participate versus how disruptions impact learning is a great way to teach students what is okay and what is not okay during classroom discussions. Secondly, you want to engage students in structured discussions. So use group roles. Assign discussion roles like having a note taker, a speaker, a summarizer, etc., to ensure that all students have a responsibility during discussions. This approach can help limit disruptive behaviors by making every student feel engaged and accountable. Implement Think, Pair, Share. Start with a structured approach to discussions like Think, Pair, Share, where students first reflect individually, then discuss with a partner, and finally share with the class. This allows all students to participate without feeling compelled to shout out. Third, you want to develop and use a positive reinforcement system. Praise and rewards. Move from occasional verbal praise to consistent, specific praise. For instance, say, I appreciate how Timmy waited to speak and shared an insightful comment that was relevant to what Emily said earlier. Consider a classroom reward system where if all students meet discussion expectation, the class earns points towards a collective goal such as extra free time, a game day, or cell phone time, other classroom chosen incentives. And then you can also introduce a recognition board. Instead of using name and shame approach, which was what Mr. Lewis was doing, try a STAR behavior board to highlight positive contributions. This shifts focus from penalizing disruptive students to rewarding respectful, engaged participants, which will create a more positive classroom atmosphere. Fourth, you want to implement clear, fair consequences for disruptions. Use a tiered consequences chart. Establish a clear and predictable set of consequences for disruptions that is shared with students, such as first offense, you get a reminder and a private check-in with the student. You talk to them, pull them to the side. Second offense, maybe a seat change or a timeout from the discussion circle. Repeated behavior, a brief meeting with Mr. Lewis after class to discuss behavior with a focus on finding strategies for improvement. A discussion with the student to see, hey, what can I do to help you be more successful in these discussions? And then once again, you want to involve students in problem solving. When disruptive behaviors persist, meet with the student individually to discuss the impact of their behavior and set goals for improvement. Involving students in identifying their triggers and suggesting strategies can empower them to self-regulate better. The fifth step, we want to engage parents as collaborative partners. Instead of only calling home after problems arrive, build proactive communication with parents. I know oftentimes it's easy for teachers just to call when something's wrong, but you want to call them when things are positive as well. So brief positive calls home about student participation can build a strong positive relationship that may help reduce future behaviors. For repeat offenders, enlist parent support in creating positive reinforcement that is not just implemented at school, but follows them at home. Lastly, you want to monitor and reflect on progress. A weekly review. At the end of each week, reflect with the class on how discussions went and celebrate improvements. Engage students in self-assessments. Ask them what went well and what they could improve. This reinforces ownership and accountability, and is something that you can put on your evaluation, how you're using students' input to better improve the classroom. And then evaluation and adjustment. Mr. Lewis should review the effectiveness of his plan regularly. If improvements aren't sustained, consider consulting with the school counselors or the behavior specialists for additional support and strategies such as social skills training or conflict resolution strategies for specific students. This plan emphasizes positive reinforcement, structured engagement, and consistency in responses, which should lead to a more sustained improvement in classroom behavior and a stronger, more positive learning environment within your class. So, the conclusion and takeaways. The importance of classroom management. Well, effective management promotes student learning by reducing disruptions, optimizing instructional time, and maintaining a positive classroom atmosphere for you. It's not just good for you, but it's also in the best interest of your students. Key objectives include promoting student engagement, ensuring safety in the learning environment, facilitating meaningful learning experiences, and supporting student learning needs. And that concludes this presentation on classroom management. Here are my references if you are interested.